Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome to another video, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Gateron Black Ink switches. Before we start this video, I want to just get this out of the way. This is all my preference, all my opinion, of course. Whatever I say is just what's happened in my case. These switches may feel, may sound, may look different than maybe not look, but you get what I mean. All depends on the person, maybe the vendor you get them from, etc, etc. I'm just going to be stating what happened with me, how my experience went with these switches, so yeah. Let's ask the question, what are Gateron Black Inks? Why have I purchased them in the first place? Well, Gateron Black Inks are said to be some of the thockiest and smoothest switches out there. They're a linear switch by Gateron, as the name suggests, and have a relatively heavy spring weight with a bottom out of 70 grams, though there's some confusion on the weight. For example, on KBD fans, it says has a bottom out of 80 grams. I have 67 gram springs in my Alpacas, and they don't feel much heavier than those, so by comparison, I'd probably assume these are 70 grams. Which, don't get me wrong, not too heavy, it's just some people may prefer a lighter weight. I actually do like the weight of these switches quite a bit. So why have I bought these switches out of all the switches that there could be? Obviously, I'm not getting sent these switches, so I'm buying these with all my own money. So because of that, I'm trying to make the best decision for myself so I don't waste money, obviously. So the reason behind why I got these over all the other switches that I could have chosen is because I guess there's a lot of good feedback about them. If you've seen any of Hamaginio's videos, he always talks very greatly about Gateron Ink V2 switches, saying how smooth, how thocky, how satisfying they feel. And they're always looked at as a very premium switch, which reflects the price of these, which these are 75 cents a switch, around there, maybe cheaper, maybe more, depends on the vendor, of course. Let's talk about some of the specs of the switch. Like I said, these have a spring that bottom outs at 70 grams. The housing is made out of a mystery material, basically a mix or something of the sort that Gateron wants to keep secret because probably something special about it that they don't want to disclose, so don't know much about that. I'm not sure, but I think the stem is palm. Don't take my word for it. I'll just probably put something on the screen that says if that is true or not. Alright, for a premium switch that you're paying this much for, you'd probably expect them to have very good tolerances, be very smooth, all that type of stuff. So let's test out the tolerances. I'm going to be comparing them with Alpaca switches, mainly because that's the only other switch I have that's linear. Okay, right here I have them side by side with some Alpaca switches. So these are all lubed and filmed with TX films, so they have the same films inside of them, and lube doesn't really change the tolerances. Gateron Black Ink, pretty tight. There's a tiny bit of wobble, especially when you put it all the way down. Housing does not wobble at all, basically. I have two here just to see if there's any inconsistencies. They're both basically the same, expected. Now let's look at the Alpacas. These are a much cheaper switch, one of the JWK recolors. These are only 55 cents a switch compared to 70 cents or 75 cents a switch. Surprisingly, it seems the Alpacas have less wobble than the Gateron Black Inks, even though Gateron Black Inks are a much more premium switch. So that honestly surprised me. I feel like a lot of people have said they're extremely tight, but it seems that Alpacas are actually tighter, which actually surprises me. Obviously, they're both perfectly usable. You're not going to be noticing that while you're typing. Alright, so the tolerances, I guess not looking so good for the Gateron Black Inks, comparing them to the Alpacas which we have here. Now I think it's a good time to note something about the differences between the V1 and V2. These are V2 switches, these are not the V1s, which doesn't mean they're just a perfectly revised or better version of the V1s. There's better and worse things between the V2 and V1s. So let me get into a bit of backstory, I guess. The V1s were a extremely smooth switch. Obviously I don't have any. I'm going by what I've heard by people like Antti Nguyen. Sorry if I'm like mispronouncing that name. So yeah, the Ink V1s were extremely smooth, but they had a issue with, I think, the leaf. So basically it would wobble around or maybe just pop out, which would make the switch feel horrible and just unusable. The majority of them had that issue. They fixed that with the V2s, but it came at a cost because now the V2s, while still very smooth, aren't as smooth as the V1s and have some inconsistencies between switch to switch. And it's noticeable too. Lubing these two might even out the difference, of course. But yeah, that's one thing about these that is kind of disappointing, or just something I wanted to note. Stock with this one, pretty smooth. Like, it honestly doesn't feel too much different compared to the lube ones when it comes to smoothness and smoothness only. But of course, again, some of them are inconsistently smooth, or some have a bit of scratch for whatever reason and don't feel nearly as good as that one, which is kind of strange. Again, when lubing them, the differences kind of even out, I guess you can say. Now let's talk about the lubed one. So obviously it makes it much smoother, but it's not like an effortless, frictionless feel. It is very smooth. There's no scratch at all, but this may be because of the spring weight, maybe because it's heavier than other switches. So I have Alpacas here with 67 gram spring, so it's not even that much heavier than the Ink Black, yet the Alpacas have more of a just straight down frictionless feel, while again having less wobble. And the Gateron Black Inks feel like they're being hugged, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. They feel more like there's more friction, or a bit more like the stem is being hugged more. It's really hard to explain, if I'm honest. Sorry if I'm just explaining it so badly. And then again, some are inconsistently not as smooth and do have a tiny bit of scratch even when lubed. Though when typing at a normal like speed, you don't really notice any inconsistency between the smoothness. You do feel the feeling of it being hugged. Again, I don't know how to explain it. The Alpaca just feels like there's nothing holding it, even though it's still tighter. This may be a difference between the lube I used, because when I had the Alpacas, I didn't have any 205 grade 0. I had 205 grade 2, which is a thicker lube. Maybe that has affected it. And I assure you, I did not over lube these, because I actually tried it out with multiple different amounts of lube, and I put less on the Gateron Inks than I put on the Alpacas. Obviously, again, Alpacas have thicker lube, but I tried with a very little bit, none, and a lot, and then the amount I have on these, and they all still had that feeling. Again, this might just be mine. This may not happen to you. You just might feel different. Again, there are inconsistencies. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the sound. So I have a Vast here. Obviously, the sound is going to differ largely between which keyboards you have, but let's compare them to Alpacas here. Obviously, this is not scientific because the positioning of the switches on the keyboard do affect sound, but I'm just trying to get a basic rundown of the sound. So some Alpacas right here. Gateron Black Inks. Well, they live up to the hype of their sound profile, at least. They're very thocky. They're much deeper sound than the Alpacas. Of course, Alpacas are made, like specifically made to be a clackier switch, but they still have that deep, thocky sound that I guess I was looking for when I bought these. Let's go through a quick sound test with all the Gateron Black Inks on the entire board, so you can get a better idea of how they sound. This is something that the mic doesn't pick up very well, which is the volume of the switch in comparison. Gateron Black Inks are a bit quieter, and I don't know why. I mean, maybe just the nature of it being a deeper sound makes it quieter. Obviously, I don't have many comparisons to make. The only other switches I have are Alpacas at the moment, but yeah, they're much quieter, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, all down to preference. I personally would like them to be louder. I love the sound profile of the Black Gat Inks, but they're a bit quiet, and I share a room with 2 other siblings, so there's a lot of noise in my room, and I like to be able to hear the keyboard. Obviously not too much, but my brother's computer fans are so loud, dude. But yeah, a bit quieter than I'd like. Do sound very nice though. Now let's get on to probably the most disappointing part, in my opinion, about these switches, which is the feel. Not the smoothness, but just the bottom out. This honestly surprised me a lot because I haven't heard a single person mention this. Again, maybe this is just mine, but I have asked in servers, and some people also agreed that it felt the way it does. How does it feel? You're probably asking. Mushy. What? It feels fine when you have like one switch or something, but then when you put an entire board, it feels like you're typing on... How do I explain it? I've never tried silent switches, so I don't know exactly how those feel, but I feel like that's a comparison I could be making, but again, I'm not completely sure. But it just feels soft, which could be nice for some people. Could be a bit pleasant, I'm not sure. Again, all down to preference, but it doesn't have that satisfying bottom out that I really like, which again, when put on an entire keyboard, makes it pretty unsatisfying to type on, even with the nice sound. But again, you can't hear the sound too much, so then it makes it even less satisfying. Not sure how to explain that, but yeah, that's probably the part where I'm most disappointed on. Is they're pretty mushy, and I haven't heard a single person ever mention it, which is why I'm also very confused. And again, I'm not sure if it's just mine, and again, I swear I did not overlube these because I've tried it with very little little bit of lube on like only on the stem, and it still resulted the same looking bottom out. Alright, so we talked about the smoothness, bottom out feel, tolerances, etc. But what are my overall thoughts on these switches? Personally, I am very disappointed with the way these switches feel and just the switch overall. And they're just not something I would want to use. Yeah, they sound nice, but like I said, they're a bit quiet, so it gets drowned out a lot of the time. Obviously, they're not like a silent switch, but still not exactly what I would prefer. Though it's all preference in the end. You might buy these and maybe not mind the soft feeling, maybe not even have the soft feeling. Like I said, there's inconsistencies between switch to switch, batch to batch. So I may have gone unlucky. There's a lot of other switches that are consistent batch to batch. For example, my Alpacas, my U4Ts. So personally, I would stray away from these. Maybe go look for some other linears. Though again, in this hobby, you have to always be testing out to see what you like. So maybe you'll love the Gateron Black Inks. Yeah, that'll be it for this video. If you're interested in the Gateron Black Inks, maybe you want to test them out, or maybe you want a soft feeling switch. Who knows? You can check them out in the description below. I'll have some affiliate links with keys for all down there. So buying them from there would greatly support me. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you did, then like, subscribe, all that stuff. And yeah, goodbye.